Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. It's Jeremy Werner, Mike LaTulip. Let's talk a little basketball before signing day for football on Wednesday. Got a lot to chat about here. It's a disappointing loss for Illinois at Madison Square Garden. Really uncompetitive for the most 35 minutes there, but Illinois does make a late rally. Some things to talk about negatively, some things, maybe some silver linings from this game, but also a huge matchup on Saturday in Nashville against Tennessee. Mike LaTulip, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. I didn't travel as much as you traveled over the last week or so, but or experience as much snow as you experienced over the last week or so. We got snow here in Indy, but nothing like I think what you guys got there in Central Illinois.
Yeah, we just got more of it today. So
yeah, we got some last night. Haven't gotten any today. It's November. This feels early. No,
right? Yeah, I looked at my wife. I looked at my wife on Sunday night, and I said, "Is tomorrow December?"
Yeah,
it's crazy. I was like, "It's already December." There has been some good basketball, man. The Big Ten, pretty good start, especially for the top half of the league here.
Oh yeah, I mean the league at this point seems like it runs through. Obviously, Purdue is going to have something to say about it, but just what we envision Michigan could be. And granted, I take a lot of the MTE results. Now, when you win by a combined margin of 110 over 3 games, that's going to get my attention. But the MTEs are weird. Things can go off the rails pretty quickly for some teams. So, and that's a really tough team to play against on a one-day prep over and over again. And then Michigan State I tried to talk about it preseason. I think I talked about it in our roundtable, but why count them out? Why, after a 17-3 finish last year, returning the parts they returned, 4 starters, 4 starters, why can't they compete for the league? You know,
and it's fascinating because you have just different ways of doing rosters, building rosters, and Painter and Izzo doing what they do, and then you have Dusty May and Brad Underwood and basically everybody else in college basketball doing what they do. So, a couple ways to skin a cat here, Mike.
There is. And I think it's a feather in the cap for Tom Izzo. I don't want to say criticized, but we questioned.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, we questioned just how dormant he was in the portal. And I think he's seen the fruits of it the last 2 years, where you get in a Jeremy Fears and you get in, Cooper and Kohler get more minutes in the program. And then all of a sudden you get year 2 of Kurt Tang, and he's providing valuable minutes, and Cohen Carr is on his 3rd year. And just, I think all of that we don't see it as much, obviously, nowadays, and it's not just getting the retention, but when you retain the guys that understand your system and play a certain way, which is super hard and super cohesive, and they rebound the hell out of the ball and they play fast. I mean, that's the result you can get. So it's going to be a fascinating Big Ten race.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Illinois has 2 losses. Now, 2 losses to top 10 teams. I want to put that asterisk here. But their last 2 marquee games, Mike, have not gone their way. And for 30 minutes, they just didn't look like they were at UConn's level last week. So why? What went wrong?
Well, I think it was a multitude of things. I think the key mistakes defensively, the scouting report errors early, I think that gave UConn a lot of comfortability. You botch the switch on Caravan for a 3. You don't get matched up in transition. You're not closing out possessions on the defensive glass. And then just some of the dying on screens too, off ball, on ball. I think what all of that boils down to, and this is really, we can talk scheme, offense, defense, we can talk all those things. But for me, what it boils down to right now for this group is really understanding the level of nastiness and focus that's required both physically and mentally to win high level games. And I'll obviously UConn is a high level game. Alabama is a high level game, but I consider a ton of these Big Ten games to be high level games. I consider all these Big Ten games to be high level games. And so being able to take care of business when you don't have your best stuff is what makes great teams great teams. Because I've talked about it preseason, you're only going to have probably 5 or 6 games this year where you really bring your A-plus game, your A-plus game. So all these other games, how can you survive? How can you win? And I think it has to come from just a level of effort and focus and nastiness that I don't think this team has yet. Can they get there? Sure. But I think it's on this staff to find ways to bring that out of it.
Yeah. And Brad benched 3 of his starters for basically the final 10 minutes. Andrei Stojakovic, no show in this game for the most part, Mike. Keaton Weigler, David Mirkovic, freshmen struggling against these high major opponents. What'd that tell you when Brad benched those guys for the final 8 to 12 minutes there?
Well, I'll certainly get to that, but just to expand a little bit, because I think it all ties together, is just go back to that 21-22 team, the team that won the Big Ten regular season. That team found ways to win, even when it was ugly. There was a stretch there in the Big Ten where, one of those wins was a 68-53 win over Michigan, where they shot 6 for 20 from 3. They were out-rebounded. But when I look at Trent Frazier, when I look at Jacob Grandison, when I look at DeMonte Williams, those guys had a level of nastiness to them. And you could say, oh, well, they had Kofi. Well, Kofi went out the next game with a concussion against Purdue. And then the following games, you lost to Maryland. And then you win 56-55 at home against Michigan State, where you shoot 9 for 29 from 3, where you're out-rebounded by 14, where you take 7 free throw attempts. So how do you win? And it's defensively. And it's just with a certain mettle and grit. You go up to Northwestern the next game, and you win 59-56, where you shoot 5 of 18 from 3, and you turn the ball over 13 times. So you can see, just like over the course of a regular season in the Big Ten, that is how you win Big Ten titles.
Can I counter with something, Mike?
Sure.
Did Brad recruit that roster?
I mean,
that's my question about it.
Yeah. That roster.
Did he recruit to build that team this year with this current group? Is that how this group was built?
It's a different group.
Yeah.
But I think regardless of the group that you bring in and how you want to play, those things should always be the pillars.
Yeah.
Always. And I have film after this, stick around, just to show some of it. But going back to your point about the starters being 3 starters being benched there in that last 10-minute stretch, like that tells me that it should be a good reminder for those guys that if they don't have it, and this is part of it, like those teams that I mentioned, those teams could not go as deep from a talent perspective as these teams could, but the guys that were on the floor constantly played a certain way. And so that I think is the difference with this group. So what this group tells me is, yeah, those guys that if you don't want to bring it, there are going to be guys that are capable of stealing your minutes. And that maybe wasn't true for those previous teams. But not only just the 3 reserves on the floor at the end of the game, but I'll throw Brandon Lee in there too, because he's going to guard. And there's going to be moments where you want to throw a guy in the game that is going to guard, but that should be the expectation for everybody. And so Stojakovic, the 1 for 7 doesn't concern me as much as the 0 rebounds in 24 minutes. Mm-hmm. Just like this team is as a whole, he is learning what it takes to be a part of winning, because he hasn't been a part of that to this point in his collegiate career. That's just the reality of it. And so not allowing what's going on offensively to make you invisible in other areas and having a different gear, I think, against teams like a UConn that pack the paint, that, will rotate, that will help. And Texas Tech and Alabama allowed you to match up on a little bit more than these teams do. And so when that's the case, where can you evolve as a player? And to me, that's transition, that's putbacks, that's cuts, that's all the areas where a guy at 6'7", who's athletic as he is and is such a good finisher around the rim, that's where he takes that next step. It can't be like, hey, we know we got Andre when this team plays a certain way defensively, because it has an impact on his entire game. And so, and they need him to be great. We can get this with Tommy later, but you can talk about Brandon Lee and Zavonimir and all these guys. You need your best players to be your best players.
Right.
Always. You need that. And then even for Keaton and for Merck, you look at those 2 guys, they're your 3 most efficient 5-man lineups. Those 2 are a part of all of them. Mm-hmm. All 3 of them. They're going to play. They need to play. Illinois is better when they're on the floor. But I just thought that was a really tough matchup for Mirovich. It just was. That's a lot to ask of a freshman to chase Karaban off of screens, to deal with the screening extras. Karaban's super, super advanced in that regard. So having to navigate that, I personally didn't think that should have been the matchup.
Agreed.
And they decided to roll with it. And I thought early, you bust the switch, and Mirovich died on some screens off the ball. And I thought he fought, but the energy that you give towards fighting, what does that mean? Is it just like, I'm going to lose my mind and I'm not going to think the game? I think that's where I'll single out Mirovich specifically, but I don't ever doubt that he plays hard. Now it's just finding that blend of can we mix the playing hard with the thinking the game? And that's just something as a freshman that's going to come. And that's why you schedule this way. I mean, Indiana hasn't played a team that's quad 1 or quad 2 right now. Illinois has played at least 3 of them. And so you find out more about your team sooner. And I think I'm glad to have these conversations on December 2nd than I am on February 2nd.
One of my favorite things about waking up in the morning is coffee. And it's even better if you get it from Columbia Street Roastery. And the best thing to do around the holidays is give coffee. And they got a great way of doing that. Columbia Street Roastery, if you go to csrcoffee.com, they have a subscription box that you can get. Each month, Columbia Street sends you freshly roast coffee of 3 different half-pound bags. You can get from their flavored coffee box, their dark roast, their medium roast, their decaf box, and you can get a subscription for $25 per month. What a great way and what a great gift to give. Or if you want to get something for yourself, go to csrcoffee.com. Check out all their fall flavors, all their great brews, and they also have tea and hot cocoa. So go check them out at csrcoffee.com. And our listeners, you get 10% off your first order if you use the code GOILLINI2025. Again, go to visit csrcoffee.com. Get 10% off your first order with the code GOILLINI2025. You get free shipping on orders over $45. That's all at Columbia Street Roastery at csrcoffee.com. Could we talk about a few positives from this game?
Yeah,
there were a couple. Kylin Boswell was the best player on the court, Mike. That was really encouraging to see. From the start, the aggression, and if anybody should have been pissed off that day, it was Kylin Boswell, because I just thought he gave it his all, and he showed what it's got to be. Now I'm wondering, can he lift everybody else to kind of match that? That's kind of my next question for him.
He was tremendous offensively. I think he continues to just be a complete menace getting downhill. He's finishing at 70% around the rim again this year. We talked about that last year, just how much of a development that was in his game, and how he's just continued that at 6'2", getting to the free throw line. That really helps stabilize an offense right now that is just in the midst of it. And it's on Tyler here to figure out how they want to play. And I know different games are going to call for different matchups, but he's going to figure out exactly how they want to roll. Because part of it for Kylin is his job as an on-floor leader. And I talked about, Brad Underwood and the staff bringing out the nastiness in this team, finding ways, levers to pull to get that nastiness out. But for Kylin, who can you bring along with you? Yeah. Are you holding guys accountable? Because you do the things as a leader, and being in that locker room, you get most annoyed when the guy getting on you is the guy not doing the things he's telling you to do. And Kylin does the things that he would tell other people to do. So you're being more, letting go a little bit in terms of getting on guys. And I've seen him do it. I mean, I've been there in person. I'm sure you've seen him do it. But what I want to see moving forward is, there's times where, because of what's being asked of him offensively right now, there's times where the defense slips. I mean, he had a couple plays there in the second half that were just completely uncharacteristic. The back screen for the Karaban layup in the second half, he just completely abandoned the help because he had solo ball. And that just led to just little stuff like that, where I feel like when he is most dialed in defensively is when there's a balance to his game. And that's going to come from others emerging offensively. And so that's what I want to see going forward is can others step up more consistently on that end to give him that balance to focus on both ends? Because what Trent Frazier had was he had Io and he had Kofi and he had different guys to just kind of take that burden off of him so he could focus on that end. He was still a fantastic offensive player, but this is unique for Kylin because it's two. I think it's a 24% usage percentage right now, which is 4 or 5% higher than last year. It's just that's a lot to put on one guy that you're counting on heavily to be your point of attack defensively. So, but I'll go back and say, I mean, he's been, I mean, I'd say like first team All Big Ten, second team All Big Ten type of performer here to start the season, which is the exact type of leap you wanted to see from him.
Didn't Terrence go through something similar like that where his defense would slip because they had to rely on him so much offensively?
Well, his defense slipped initially when he came to Illinois. His defense slipped when his offense wasn't going.
Yeah.
Penn State, December 10th, 2022 at home, when they just got their asses kicked. That was the game where I think Terrence had 4 points in that game, and then he gave next to nothing defensively. I think that's the infamous fart noise after the game. And then he found a way to even balance it out too. And granted, Terrence at 6'7", turning it on and turning it off, it's easier for guys like that because they can, if they get beat, they can recover a little bit easier. If they blow an assignment, they can get back out and contest a little bit easier than a guy that's maybe 6'2", 6'3". So yeah, but Terrence definitely dealt with that. Yeah. And Terrence was carrying an offensive burden that I think Marcus Damask helped him with.
Yeah.
To allow him to focus a little bit more on just a more well-rounded, cohesive game. So that's why that's why there's 5 guys on the floor. And that's why you can't have, like, if Kylin Boswell, in my opinion, if Kylin Boswell is scoring 25 points a night, I don't know how many games you're going to win against high-level opponents. And that has absolutely nothing to do with Kylin Boswell.
Right.
Nothing to do with him. So that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's why Stojakovic is really important. And it's why, Mike, the second half for me, the final 10 minutes especially of Tomislav Ivicic was so encouraging to me. He looked like a completely different player at a halftime. Just his aggression on the glass defensively was something we hadn't seen. And then there was a point when he was on the block, Mike, and I heard him screaming, "Get me the ball, give me the ball." Like, it's the first time I'd seen that this season since he's come back from an injury and had that post move and scored and took a 3 confidently. God, they need that Tomislav Ivicic back. So how encouraging to you, or what did you see in that second half from Tomislav?
It should give him confidence because I thought Z flat out was the better option in the first half of that game.
Sure.
Honestly, not even close. And I got to commend Z because he's come a long way just in terms of his effort and how consistent he plays on that end, on really both ends. I mean, now he jacks some threes, but I thought in the second half, it was good, certainly good for him to see a few go through the basket, but just being a little bit more active in drop coverage and being a guy who's going up and snatching rebounds and not having, us sit there and worry about like, hey, when he has it, is somebody going to knock it out of his hands? Is he going to, is the ball going to pop out? All that stuff I think is for Tommy. And then being in there at the end of the game, playing with 2 guys who can operate in ball screens like Kylin and like Mihailo can, freed him up for some pick and pops. They actually missed him like 3 times on rolls. They ran this action where it's essentially like it's a double drag ball screen where you got Ben setting the first screen, Tommy setting the second screen, and Ben's going to set the first screen, or Tommy's going to set the first screen and roll to the basket. Ben's going to set the second screen and kind of like shallow cut out on a pick and pop. So it's supposed to kind of throw off your tag defenders. And Tommy's like wide open on the roll. They don't throw the ball to him. He had another roll that he had just nobody in the vicinity. Ball ended up getting thrown to the same side corner to Jake Davis for a 3 when they were down 10 and he missed it. But like, those are even more opportunities, I think, to get him baskets around the rim to get that confidence up. Cause that's what for any player, you don't want to come to a game and be like, hope my confidence and my rhythm offensively comes from me making threes when you're 7-1. So they'll probably look at the film. They'll see some of that he's open on those rolls. And the more they throw it to him, the more teams will get sucked in, the more you can hit the backside. And the more you throw it into him and he's potent around the basket, the more maybe he commands a double team and passes out of it. And you get more catch and shoot looks from 3. You can just see
and I think of a guy like Ben Humrickhouse being able to step into threes rather than like, catch, like you were talking about in the last podcast,
Yeah.
kind of fading backwards a little bit. So he can get a lot of people potentially going there.
Yeah, he can. And so I think, he's been, since he's come back from injury, I mean, everybody was a plus in the Jackson State game, but he's been from a plus minus standpoint. It's not, it's not the best stat to look at, game to game, but over the course of, you get a 5-game sample size, 7-game sample size. It's a real stat. And the Long Island game was the only game he's been a net positive in. And he was a net positive in that second half against UConn. So you hope that he can continue to build on that, because it ain't going to get any easier here coming up, Jeremy. It just ain't, especially with Tennessee.
Was this the full Mahop-Petravich experience, Mike? Came in offensively, getting open shots, getting to the rim, and then, boy, defensively, just not pretty.
There's minutes there for him.
Yeah.
I mean, there are. I think no one can tilt the defense like he can. Even Kylin, I just think Mihailo has whether it's his innate ability to split screens. I saw it when I went to practice. When he turns a corner on you, it's just really hard to get him squared back up. And there's a ton of value in that. I think it's just a matter of, for him right now, got to be sure with the ball. Not needing the home run play or feeling like you have to have the home run play. I think creating more flow and movement. The issue right now with Mihailo is like he'll have possessions where he breaks down a defense, but when him and Kylin are on the floor together right now, they play at a pace that is 65 possessions per 40 minutes, which if you extrapolate it out would be 352nd nationally in pace. So when these two are in the game is offensively, especially, it is being slowed to a crawl. And while I think that could be great for Mihailo and Kylin, I'm not sure how great that is for everyone else in terms of like getting out and running. Stojakovic, we talked about the transition opportunities, like all those certain things that I think, need to be improved. I just think, if he can find a way to contribute on the glass, and if he can find a way to contribute on the defensive end, he's going to see an uptick in minutes. But if he doesn't, he won't.
Yep.
He's crazy talented, but the harsh reality right now is in the 27 high major minutes that he's played, he's minus 19. And, teams are getting 40% of their rebounds back on the glass, which would be like 14th nationally when he and Kylin are in the game. And Kylin's going to play a lot. So that's what's fascinating to me. That's the kind of the conundrum that you're in, is like, what are you willing to sacrifice? Because you're sacrificing something to have him on the floor. And I think this goes back to a broader point too, not just with Mihailo, but I didn't put in the film because the film's more defense, but just guys, playing fast is not just about get it and speed dribble up the floor. Playing fast is hitting ahead. Get a rebound, scan, and just get the ball ahead.
Pass it faster than you can run, right?
Exactly. Create the advantages. Like we had, Mirovich, the first play of the second half, gets a defensive rebound and, just pounds the ball all the way up the floor. And if you look, it's like if he took 2 dribbles and just looked and threw it to Andre on the break, you can see it's like Andre's ahead of the pack. It's a potential 3-on-2 or a 2-on-1. And then you can play off those advantages. He dribbles all the way to the basket and doesn't even kind of falls and gets a shot up towards the rim. Mihailo had one where I think Kylin was up ahead of him and he didn't throw it to Kylin, and then got more into the half court and then threw it to Kylin. And then there was no advantage to be created at that point. So it's the tough part with Stojakovic and Petravich and even Kylin at sometimes is they really want to man the ball when they're in the half court. And what you saw earlier in the season, and I'm not saying hey, play Jake Davis, but it's the reason why when Jacob Grandison, when those guys were out there, it's just boom, ball moves, ball pops. There's life to the ball. And that's things I think they just have to work through as a group. But I'll go back to with Petrovich. There are minutes there for him, but it's what he values and how much of a net positive he can be on the glass and defensively. That's always going to be the key with him.
Mike, is there anything else you want to hit on about the UConn game before we kind of spring forward? I mean, Jake Davis, Ben Rickhouse played a lot of minutes late because they did those little things like you're talking about. Brandon Lee, making a nice contribution. Brad clearly trusts him defensively.
Yeah, and I think too. Like, last point I'll make, because it's a Brandon Lee point, and I'll show it in the film room, is the when you're navigating screens, and Trent. I mean, how many Trent Frazier masterclasses do we show this over the years? And the thing about Trent was the amount of moving screens he created were not from running into the screen and just like trying to create that like hip collision, like, Mirovich did it and fell to the ground. Petravich did it twice. Brandon Lee did it one time, got called for a foul. And then the second time he's like, screw it. The moving screen is going to come from me fighting through the screen, not from selling the screen, not from selling the moving screen. They will call that 10% of the time. 10% of the time. But if you truly are like, you know what, I refuse to get screened and I'm going to fight through this, the clip that the screener makes on you when you're fighting your ass through it, that is where the foul happens.
That seems like the toughness Brad wants. Like,
yes, that is Andres Feliz. That's Trent Frazier. That's all these guys that they didn't care about getting the foul. They cared about getting through the screen. And through getting through the screen, you can create the offensive foul. Because if they don't call it, you just blew up the play. Think about it. Like if you go in and you're like, all right, I'm going to sell this moving screen. Well, cool. If you fall to the ground and they don't call it, or you get wrapped up with the guy and they don't call it, now you put the big in a tough position because you got a guard coming downhill with no one to square him up. Yep. So that's just the stuff that it's fixable. It's fixable. It's just a matter of each guy individually being like, hey, what am I willing to do possession after possession? Because I just feel like everything you hear about this team is, hey, these guys love each other. And that is a great foundation to have because not every team has that. Yeah. I was a part of teams that, we didn't necessarily have that. But now comes the next step of like, okay, you love each other, but are you playing for each other? Like that's the step that every team takes at some point. And I think they have that foundation, that baseline. And now it's just taken to that next level of just possession by possession. I refuse to get screened because not just because I want to square the ball up. I don't want to put my other defender in a tough spot. All that stuff, I think, is if they can turn that corner, it's game on because they got a ton of the other stuff.
And fighting through screens is hard, right?
It's not easy.
You got to be willing to do the hard thing.
It is. I'll sit here and say this as a guy, 6 foot on a good day that was 160 pounds, still 160 pounds. Like it's that, but that is how you earn time is through those things. And that's why I learned throughout my career, and probably more when I got to Wright State, honestly, is like what keeps me on the floor. And it's just, all right, well, I got to be the guy to do all those things.
Yeah.
Because Mark Allstork was taking a lot of shots and a high usage guy. And so I was like, all right, cool. I can't get screened. I got to navigate every screen. I got to take charges on the ball, all that stuff that, again, gets you minutes. And I think a lot of these guys are in position to do that.
And I know we'll be accused of being the Ben Rickhouse podcast, but that's why he gets these minutes.
We shouldn't have to say it at this point. I mean, I get it. It's like 46, 38, and he has that 3 on the left wing, and it's just it's a deflating miss, just like a lot of shots were in that game. But again, I mean, he's another guy that you look at like the plus minus over a 7-game span. And I thought he did a good job on Caravan.
Sure did.
They busted, and he was responsible for that busted switch at the end of the half. Mihailo runs into the screen, but you have to get that switch down and not let them get downhill, like they did to finish off that half. So it's not perfect with Ben, but you at least know kind of where his head's at and what his mindset is, which is just like, game after game and valuing the minutes that he's in there. I don't ever question that with Ben.
The holiday season can be so much fun around your loved ones, but it also can be stressful. Think about, what am I going to prepare for that holiday meal at home? What am I going to give that loved one for the perfect gift this holiday season? So whether you're setting an unforgettable gift or treating yourself to everyday perfection, Omaha Steaks delivers the world's best steak experience. Gift USDA certified tender steaks, juicy burgers, cozy and convenient comfort meals, and so much more. I'm telling you, Omaha sent me some of the steaks, some of the burgers, some of the beef franks as well. Those delicious hot dogs. They're some of the best, most tender meat you can get. And now during their cyber sale, you can get 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites at omahasteaks.com. Don't miss the best deals of the season and exclusive limited time offers. Plus, our listeners get an extra $35 off with promo code Illini at checkout. That's $35 off with promo code Illini at checkout. Again, save big on unforgettable gifts with omahasteaks.com. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an extra $35 off, use promo code Illini at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code Illini at checkout. Terms apply. See sites for details. All right, Mike, to spin this forward, a lot of practice time coming up, including leading into this Tennessee game. But after the UConn, they had 5 games in the next 35 days. What does that mean for a team that hasn't had a lot of practice time? What's that mean for Brad Underwood?
Yeah, you touched on it. And I think it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, is just it's on this staff to find ways to pull more nastiness out of this group. You got Big Ten play coming up. You need it. And you especially need it this year in the Big Ten if you want to compete for a Big Ten title. So I'd imagine these practices are going to be competitive. War rebounding is a drill that we used to do, which was put a lid on the rim or intentionally miss shots, and there was no out of bounds. There was no jump balls. There was just put your life on the line, essentially, in this drill and go and scrap. And I think, honestly, that's where having a Brandon Lee and a Jake Davis and a Jason Jackson and a Blake Fegbemi, that's where these guys really help you, because they're going to practice like their life's on the line. And that's going to expose some guys who need to maybe get more nasty, right? And so that's what I'm looking for. Like Tommy and Z, not the time to play nice, not the time to be brother. Like push each other, challenge each other. And this will be huge for this team, because what you said, it's a team that hasn't gotten a lot of practice time together. That's not just because of the schedule this season. They didn't have much time in the fall together,
right,
with their full group. And now you feel like you have that. And, I think the fall's caught up to them in a lot of ways. So you just treat this next month or so as, hey, let's get down to brass tacks. Let's find out, who really wants to sacrifice on a possession by possession basis, who wants to have that nasty and play with that toughness and that consistent effort and focus. And those are going to be the guys that you roll into Big Ten play with. And I think it has to be those guys that are your best players. It has to be those guys. Those guys got to find a way.
All right. Illinois only dropped one spot after that loss. They're number 14. Tennessee at 7-1 is number 13. This is the third top 15 matchup Illinois has had so far this season, Mike, which is fourth, right? Yeah, fourth.
All four. Yeah.
That they've had this season. What makes Tennessee difficult? What are the concerns here going in for Illinois?
Well, again, this is why you schedule this way, because I think we thought preseason, you never know what these teams are going to look like. But we felt pretty confident that these 4 teams in the non-conference, up to this point, were going to be top 15 type teams, top 10, top 15 type teams. And so Tennessee, this is going to be, you talk about finding your nasty and toughness and stuff. It's going to be your toughest test yet from that standpoint, for sure. I think they took it to a Houston team that is all nasty. And so I look at guys like Bishop Boswell and Jalen Carey and some of the guys that aren't necessarily the household names on this Tennessee team, but those are the guys that are just their toughest dudes. So whether it's Kylin or Keaton, can you be the tougher guy between you and Bishop Boswell? David Mirovich, can you be the tougher guy between you and Jalen Carey? And Jalen Carey looks like he should play on Sundays, man. Like that dude's a house. I think his dad played in the NFL for a long time. His brother's Vernon Carey, who played in the NBA and was at Duke for 1 year. But they have this revolving door of just really tough bigs. Everyone remembers Felix Okpara, JP Estrella, Cade Phillips, and then Jalen Carey. I mean, they got guys that, I mean, they're all long. They're all tough. They can all move. They can all jump. They protect the paint. That's one thing about this Illinois team. That's why I didn't harp too much on the offense. They got 13 shots at the rim in the first half of that game, which is, good offense stems from not only just like, I thought they settled a ton, especially in the second half, early in the second half. And I thought Mirovich took a few ill-advised one in that first half, but they got shots at the rim. I mean, at some point you got to step up and knock down shots. And I think the same is going to be true in this game, where the lane isn't just going to be, oh man, we just got another downhill drive with nobody in the paint and just an uncontested layup. Everything is going to be contested. So you got to play with pace. You got to get out on the open floor, and you got to step up and knock down shots. I think it's interesting just from a matchup perspective. In that Houston game, they put Jacoby Gillespie off ball, and you had to chase him off screens off the baseline. And he's just as good, if not a better shooter than Solo Ball. So you cannot lose him. When he gets under the basket, he's coming out the other side. They're going to clear sides. So he's going to come off a baseline screen, and he's either going to straight cut it for a three, or he's going to curl it. And if he curls it, now if you're in drop coverage, Okpara, Cade Phillips, Jalen Carey, JP Estrella, they are rolling with no one to tag him. So you talk about getting through screens. This is the game. It should be every game, but this is the damn game, because you get hung up on screens with Gillespie, that's a bucket from him, or you keep the big long enough where he's throwing lobs to the bigs. And so now your rotation on the other side, who's rotating over? Can you help each other out? All these things that we talked about the previous half hour in this podcast are going to either be, we're going to sit there and say, man, these are things this team's corrected, or man, this team is continuing to be exploited here.
Yep.
And that is all going to come to light in this game. And I mentioned, like, from a matchup standpoint, Mirovich, this is crazy to say, I like the Mirovich matchup on Nate Amen, a potential lottery pick, top 5 pick. I like that more for Mirovich than I do Karaban.
Yeah.
Which sounds crazy, but it's true. I just think Mirovich can be physical with them. He doesn't finish at a high rate inside the 3-point arc. You can be there on the catch. I think they match up better in this sense than a UConn, but all those toughness components are going to be put on, Front Street, put on full display here.
All right. You mentioned the Mirovich matchup could be a positive for them. What other problems can Illinois give Tennessee?
Well, I think just like for, I thought with UConn, you saw it there in the second half, but just the ability to stretch those bigs out a little bit with Tommy. And I think you need to have a balance. You don't need Tommy to shoot 12 threes, but just having like a balance on some of these rolls to the basket while also picking and popping. It's imperative for these guards. Even if you feel like, hey, I don't have anything getting downhill, fight to get 2 feet in the paint. Fight to get 2 feet in the paint. I think, and then being able to time it up a bit better with Tommy. Too many times in that game against UConn, it's like Kylin gets downhill, and the timing at which you throw back to the pick and pop is everything. Like, you got to throw back to the pick and pop while the big is retreating. Throw it back. Not like, oh, I got stuck. Catch, pivot. Actually, I don't have a shot. Pick and pop back to Tommy. Tommy's out of rhythm. The big's closing back in. All that I think is huge in this game. And then just being able to close out possessions and get stops. And that's going to come down. Like, I'm curious to see, is this given the nature of Jacoby Gillespie and Bishop Boswell and the way Tennessee defends and the way Tennessee is on the glass, like, is this a Petravich game? I don't know. But if he can prove to stay on the floor in this game, he can prove to stay on the floor in a lot of games.
Where does Nate Ament rank on your NBA draft prospects in this loaded freshman class?
I question him a little bit more than some of the other guys, the Caleb Wilsons. Certainly you have the top 3 with Boozer, Peterson, and Debansa. But I think Ament, to me, is probably in that like 7 to 10 range. There's a few other guys I like a little bit better than him, just because I don't know, some of the shot diet stuff. He takes some tough ones, some long twos. So I think you can force him into a few of those. But he's a really good rebounder too. And he can get, if you don't check him out, he can get you on the offensive glass. So I'd have him in that 7 to 10 range. He's young though. I mean, these guys are like 18, 19 years old. They got room to grow, but he's a good player. I'm not as scared about that matchup than I was with Caravan.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, if they win this one, you feel pretty good about getting half of the 4 games against top 15 opponents, right? You feel really great. That's setting you up for, a resume that can be really good, gives you some confidence going into the Big Ten play in the Missouri game. If you lose, man, like this team's it doesn't mean like everything's off the table with this team or anything, but they got to respond from that. And it'd just be interesting if they end up losing that game.
Well, and it doesn't get easier. I mean, you start getting into Big Ten play, where all these games beyond a resume really matter for just the Big Ten standings. And
Ohio State ain't easy.
No, I mean Ohio State and especially Nebraska. I've talked about Nebraska 3 or 4 times already this season, just kind of randomly, because I look at that game as a team that's going to pack the paint, make you make shots over the top. And Ohio State is a team that, they struggle defensively, but they can really hurt you offensively. And Bruce Thornton, I think, is one of the most talented offensive players in the country. And now they got Christoph Tilley, who's a 5-man that can step out, and they play through him as a hub. But look, Tennessee, Rick Barnes was pissed after that Kansas game that they played because he thought that they weren't tough enough like they were against Houston. So they play Syracuse tonight, I think. And, this is going to be a get-right game for them. And then they're going to I expect them to win that game against Syracuse on the road. And I expect them to come into Nashville feeling pretty good about themselves. So you're going to have a tough task here. And granted, like you get this one, I think a split always kind of felt like the goal. I forget you and Trotter did the breakdown. And I forget if I had predicted it this way. I definitely said the win against Texas Tech. I didn't think they'd beat UConn. I maybe didn't think they'd beat Alabama and thought they'd beat Tennessee. It's a little bit of a different position right now, just given where this team's at right now, but it's a winnable game. There's no doubt it's a winnable game, but you got to cut down on the scouting report errors. You got to cut down. You got to be the nastier team. You do those things alone. And we go back to what we talked about in 21-22. You start figuring out ways to win games when it's not perfect. And that's got to be the recipe for this team, because all the other teams that are at the top of the Big Ten, Michigan State, I know damn well, understands how to win ugly. They understand how to do it. Michigan, we'll see. I think they're really good, obviously. Purdue, I think, knows how to win ugly. You want to compete in this league, you got to figure it out.
For sure. Mike LaTulip, you're the goods, man. We'll catch up next week as Big Ten play begins for Illinois. Thank you, buddy.
Excited. Thanks, man.